So really exciting. So first, thank you all for joining. I know, again, I said this on my opening remarks. If you didn't hear it, thank you. During this crazy time, it's amazing that, and sad in the same way, that we don't get to meet each other and see each other in person. And I miss seeing a lot of my colleagues from around. But the first session went great with Luann, and then we followed up with a really exciting panel on B2C and how we're doing disbursements on the commercial side. And now we're going to refocus and pivot to the small business. And it's a super exciting segment for me. I really am passionate about small business owners. As a lot of you know, I've done everything from work at big banks to starting my own bank to startups, and I am passionate about helping the small business customer. And Zelle is something that really can accelerate and help a small business owner, especially. I'll reiterate this if you didn't see my opening remarks, but people have asked me, what's changed during this pandemic? And I say, nothing and everything. And when I say nothing, because we at U.S. Bank, this has been our strategy to accelerate digital connections and money movement. And so what it really has done is just accelerated everything we've done, and we've seen our customers accelerate things. So I am super excited to turn it over to two knowledgeable folks, Carol Rossman on my team, who has been heading up Zelle and the product management for Zelle since the inception at U.S. Bank, and Kulpa, who manages for early warning system Zelle small business offering. So my pleasure to turn it over to them and kick off. So Carol and Kulpa, go for it.
Thank you, Peter. I'm Carol Rossman from U.S. Bank, and it's really great to be here to talk about Zelle today. As Peter mentioned, I've worked on Zelle at U.S. Bank since before we launched it in 2017. I also worked on the launch of the small business product, which we're going to talk about with you today. And it's really great to see the momentum that we've had and how businesses and consumers have embraced Zelle. So with that, I will turn it over to my partner from Early Warning and the Zelle Network, Kulpa.
Thank you, Carol. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kalpa Gupta, and I lead Zelle product management at Early Warning. Super excited to be here. My family back in India owned a small business, and I've seen the struggles of making the small business operations kind of work, right? And so I am today here, I really thank you for your interest and participation. In this session, I will plan to cover, if we could go to the next slide, please. Some of the industry trends and opportunities for small business, as well as challenges facing small business and advantages of adopting digital payments. We'll get into what is Zelle and how Zelle can help small business. And then my partner in crime, Carol Rossman, will cover a deep dive into a lot about nitty-gritties of how Zelle works, specific examples and testimonials for how small businesses are reaping the benefits of huge rewards with Zelle, right? You're welcome to leave your questions in the chat or ask those at the end of the presentation, and we'll do our best to answer those. Next page, please. The smartphone adoption in the US has reached over 85%. As my colleague Eric Faust mentioned in the prior session, as well as Luan spoke to some of the key trends. US has over 260 million smartphone users, only after China and India. And particularly with smartphone adoption, the P2P payments also continues to grow. Cash is on its way out. I think that shouldn't be a surprise. Cash has stayed stable for a number of years. Check volumes have overall kind of gone down. But in light of pandemic, we are seeing some fundamental shifts. Earlier this year, in a survey, about 22% of US consumers mentioned that they have reduced their usage of cash. I personally, during the pandemic, I continued paying my landscaper and my cleaning lady for even if whether they were able to show up or not through the Zelle, using Zelle. Next, on the digital payments, we have seen almost 50% of users now send or receive a digital payment at least 2 times a month, right? That's significant. Business owners, they're also catching up to the digital adoption, similar to consumers. At larger financial institutions, the past 90-day adoption reached over 85% for online and 54% for mobile in 2019. Particularly with this pandemic, I think it's accelerating the shift to digital adoption, as well as that is a unique opportunity for small businesses such as yours to engage with customers, as well as those that are providing services to other small businesses or consumers, also manage your business processes efficiently. Next page, please. There are over 30 million small businesses in the US, and small businesses such as yours are really the backbone of US economy, accounting for almost 45% to 50% of GDP. It's hard to imagine in times of like this, where the businesses have been hard hit. But I have been always, as an immigrant to this nation, which locally really contribute to the heavily to the local economy. Today, there are about 55.3 billion check and cash transactions that are targeted to small businesses. Especially excluding the point of sale, there are 2.2 billion transactions. So that's over 100 transactions for small business in a year that happen in check and cash. And that really represents an opportunity to streamline and help the small businesses get paid faster and in a very easy and seamless way. Go to next page, please. So what are the small business market challenges? It probably won't come as a surprise to you, but you know, a lot of the outdated processes, lack of transparency and lack of speed, these are really three key small business challenges. Small business owners, you probably have used Zelle or services like you know, other services in your personal lives. And now more and more small businesses are really comfortable more than ever with real-time payments. And they're looking for solutions that can streamline their business payments, if you will. And this is where the role of digital payments come in to make sure that small businesses have solutions so that they can really focus on the business, engage with their employees, as well as make them more happy, rather than worrying about some of the outdated processes and lack of transparency. Over half of the businesses, they cite payment delays as one of the most frustrating part of the business, right? Think about writing a check and inquiring, or your customers maybe paid you a check and they didn't have visibility into when, you know, the payment was cashed or whether it was lost in mail. And businesses that have visibility into the payments sent or received to UX, they definitely have experienced revenue growth, as well as note very high engagement. Nearly over 75% of small businesses find real-time payments, right? Cash flow, reduced cash flow, that happens to be one of the key challenges. So anytime you can get paid faster and using real-time payments, that's really a key motivator. Or as much as 2/3 of the small businesses that say that they will switch to an FI that offers real-time payments. And US Bank, I should say, is offering those here for the small businesses. So really the question here is, what can your business do to accept digital payments and adapt to some of the smartphone adoption that has happened to really help streamline your businesses, as well as make it easy for your customers to pay you. We go to the next page. Next page, please. So this is where Zelle comes in. So what is Zelle? Hopefully you were able to join earlier in the session where my colleagues Luan Alexander and Eric Faust talked at length about what Zelle is, but those that were not able to join, really Zelle is a technology, a network, and a brand that is really recognized by a lot of consumers here in the US. It's a technology in the sense you just have to share your mobile phone number or email to send or receive money, rather than sharing sensitive bank account information. And the messaging when you send money is very immediate, so that you know the money is sent, or if it's pending, or so you don't have to. So the transparency is there in the UX, and it's within your banking app. Now, those Zelle is also a set of is governed by a set of rules, as well as that define the agreements and interactions between payment processing, disputes, settlements, and user branding and infrastructure. It's a brand. This brand is very intuitive. It's recognized by consumers. It's very intuitive. That makes it very easy for users to understand and easy to use, right? And the Zelle experience is across hundreds of financial institutions, as well as the key differentiator is that it makes the good funds available right there when you send it, right? Which provides and it has transparency. We started with P2P payments, and then we've also grown into enabling some of the larger corporates and governments to disperse payments to consumers or small businesses. And now small business offering is the next in the logical play here. Next page, please. I always chuckle when I look at this page. So we have right now, we over 900 financial institutions that are contracted to participate in Zelle Network, with more than 600 live. When I joined the company about a year and a half ago, we had about 200 live. And obviously my colleagues reminisce when it was only less than, in single digit 3 years ago, right? So it is, we are really blessed and thankful for all of the growth that we have seen. Particularly in light of pandemic, it was really fulfilling to see over 133 billion in payments go through in the first half of this year, and over 500 million transactions sent on the network. That just speaks to how is the testimony to how essential Zelle has become in the lives of our US consumers and businesses. We hopefully many of you are using Zelle, and in this session you'll also find out how you can use Zelle for your personal and business needs. Next page, please. So since Zelle launched, I mentioned that small business is really the natural next step. A lot of the small businesses, they were exposed to Zelle through early adoption of P2P, and they really told us very loud and clear that they wanted Zelle for their small business, right? So after P2P, we rolled out, we enabled the capabilities so that large financial institutions and corporates or governments could disperse funds to consumers. And then Zelle for small business. Now, once you are used to paying, splitting costs for dinner, it's hard to imagine that right now. But, maybe the cost of groceries, it's really then you wonder as a consumer, why am I not able to pay the other business? So it's a natural, logical, next steps to enabling small businesses to send and receive and request payments from using Zelle. And charitable, and who knows, there are early adopters and make payment processes a little bit easier so that folks can live their lives. You go back to the next page. So as of now, we have 7 financial institutions that enable small businesses to that enables Zelle for small businesses. And these financial institutions reach almost a third of the small businesses in the US. And really our aspiration is to again get to those hundreds, and we are really hopeful with the traction that we have seen so far in the year that we'll get there soon. For the first half of the year, till date we've seen over 8 billion in transaction, 8 billion in payments go through to small businesses, and it continues to grow. If you go to the next page, please. I saw a lot of questions come through earlier in the session, as well as this is also a concept, right? So number one, consumers can send money, any services that I do, I could send them money, right? Service sector. The second use case is the small businesses can also send payments, right? So you can send consumers payment maybe for a refund or perhaps payroll to your employees, or paying other suppliers or partners that you partner, in the small business space. So that's number two. Number three, the second one was about small businesses sending funds to other small businesses. And then third is small business can send funds to consumers, so such as the refunds, or perhaps also with your family and friends for other purposes. So these are all the three use cases that are supported by Zelle for small business, as well as the fourth use case is more disbursement. So this is large companies or governments can also send money to consumers or small businesses using disbursement. So at this time, if you need to have a U.S. bank account to be able to send and receive money using Zelle for small businesses. And this is offered through the banking app. Zelle is integrated within the banking app. Okay. So with that said, I will hand it over to Carol, who will get into a little bit more into the use cases, some of the testimonials, and how really Zelle is helping small businesses. And that hopefully gives you some ideas on how if you are not using Zelle, like how this can help you. Okay. Next page, please, Carol.
Thanks, Kalpa. As Kalpa just mentioned, U.S. Bank was one of the first banks to launch Zelle for small business, and we did so about a year ago, and it's been really exciting to see the adoption by small business. And that adoption and usage really has accelerated since the impacts of COVID hit in late March or so, and we see that continuing. So I just want to talk a little bit about how Zelle works, and first draw, I guess, a little bit of a difference between the disbursements product that we talked about a little while ago. So disbursements is really about dispersing multiple payments at a single time. So perhaps hundreds or thousands of payments to consumers and small businesses by a corporate or government entity. Zelle for small business really is much more like the person-to-person Zelle. So it's a transaction at a time. And as Kalpa just mentioned, our small business customers can access it either through their mobile device or online banking. What enables the transaction is the messaging between U.S. Bank and another financial institution that happens through the Zelle Network. The only thing the small business needs to do is enroll in Zelle and provide a mobile number or email. I saw some questions come through in one of the earlier sessions. Can a business have multiple mobile numbers or emails attached to their bank account for receiving with Zelle? And yes, you absolutely can. How many you can add sometimes differs by bank. But we definitely support that, as do the other banks who offer this product. The great thing is the payments are good funds, and the payments transact between the two accounts. So again, as Luann mentioned this morning, if you were in her session, there's no need for any other types of accounts with Zelle You don't need to take a step to move the money you receive into your bank account. It's there ready for you to use. And you can see all your Zelle transactions in your transaction log, and they'll be noted as Zelle with the name of the sender or the recipient. Next slide, please. So who benefits from using Zelle? The great thing about this, I think, is that both your business benefits as well as your consumer customers or small business partners can benefit as well. As I mentioned, you know, the funds move directly from account to account. So you receive your money in minutes if it's a customer paying you. Likewise, if you're paying a customer, once they've enrolled in Zelle, they will receive their money in minutes. Clearly, you know, it will save you time in going to the bank, bringing cash or check deposits in. It's not even necessary to go to the ATM. And while we love to have you use our mobile deposit capture, you don't even need to do that when you have Zelle because you've eliminated that paper. The one thing I really want to focus on that's a benefit for small businesses is the predictability of the cash flow. So again, the money's moving directly into your account, so you can use it immediately to make payments to others, pay bills. Also these are all good funds. I think someone asked earlier in disbursements, you know, can someone change their mind once they've paid with Zelle? No, your customers can't. These are not revocable transactions, so you don't risk any reversal of the monies afterward. Also, too, certainly you avoid, you know, potentially bad checks and the hassles that come with presenting those again or contacting your customer, which might be a sensitive matter. And it's oftentimes a big issue for small businesses to have to deal with those paper checks that did not clear. The other thing, this was mentioned as well, there's no need to, you know, there's no storing of sensitive bank account information. There's no need to give your customers your bank account information. I think in most cases, businesses do not want to give their customers any information about their bank account number. But likewise, for your consumer customer or even another small business customer, there's benefits as well. Culpa just mentioned the importance of the Zelle brand. You know, the Zelle brand is really recognized by consumers. So if you tell them they can pay with Zelle, they've likely heard of Zelle, they might be already enrolled in Zelle. It's something that's familiar to them versus, you know, payment types that may not have a name. We have also a lot of customers who actually open accounts and don't even get paper checks anymore. So that might not even be an option for people to pay you that way. So clearly a lot of convenience for your customer as well. Next slide. So we often get a question about what types of businesses is Zelle for? And I would say a really wide range of businesses, from what I call like micro businesses that might be sole proprietors, sort of just getting started with dog walking or some other business that they hope to grow, to a lot of professional services, accountants, lawyers, those kinds of services. Also home repair kinds of services, so handyman, electricians, remodeling, also subscription kinds of services where maybe somebody is doing lawn care on a monthly basis. And one of our biggest use cases is property management or landlords and collecting rent via Zelle. One of the other things I want to mention about Zelle that is really great is there is a request money transaction in Zelle. So as a small business, you can actually go into our mobile app or online banking and request money from a customer. So you could do that after the services have been rendered. You could do it on the spot if you have a mobile device. And then when the customer receives a Zelle request for money, they can log into their banking app and simply pay the amount to you with Zelle. So super convenient for everyone. And one cool thing we have coming up on that is later this year, we're going to launch recurring requests for payment. So say you're a landlord, you could set up recurring requests for payment each month to remind your tenants to pay their rent. Or likewise for those subscription services like lawn care, maybe there's a monthly payment that customers make. You could set up a recurring request for that as well. Next slide, please. Culpa also mentioned that businesses can pay others using Zelle, which is really important. And actually today we see businesses paying others as much as they are getting paid. So actually the transactions are going in volume about the same way receiving payment as sending payment. And there's a lot of different use cases for paying others. Clearly, all those kinds of service businesses on the consumer side, like doing repairs at your offices or your place of business, the cleaning service, professionals who may be servicing you, like your attorney or your accountant. And certainly one really big one is payments to employees. So especially if you have a lot of gig workers, this is a way to get them paid immediately, which they appreciate. Again, they're probably very familiar with Zelle, and if they haven't used it, it's very easy to download in their bank's mobile app or online banking. Next slide, please. So one of the things we wanted to do today was give you some examples of how Zelle can be used, some actual use cases, and show you how Zelle can save time for your business and hassles as well. So here we have a pretty simple example of a business owner who owns an electric repair company. He's an electrician. He has 3 electricians who work for him. And today he's accepting cash or check for payment. So if we go across the cash or check stream at the top of the screen, you can see on Wednesday, the electricians go out to start their jobs for 3 different families. They complete those on Thursdays and ask each of the families to pay them $500. Now, as you can imagine, it's probably likely that in 2 days they did a lot more work at different houses than that. So in reality, there's probably a lot more than 3 payments that have been collected by 3 electricians in 2 days. But those electricians then need to take those back to the business owner. He needs to get those all organized and take those payments in cash and check to the bank. And let's say it's Friday, as we have here, he doesn't have time to do that until Monday. So Monday he goes to the bank, makes his deposit, and it might be Tuesday before all of those payments clear through and are available to him to use in his account. So you can see where multiple days have gone before the owner is really able to use that money. So again, not the best cash management or cash flow for him. But using Zelle, if he sends his electricians out and he's enrolled in Zelle, the electricians can tell those customers to simply pay them with Zelle, and all they need to do is give them the business owner's mobile number or email address. The customers can generate the payment that same day on Wednesday, and the electrician and the business owner has his payments all in his account by end of day Wednesday. So we've turned a multi-day process with kind of a lot of headaches, keeping track of cash, keeping track of paper, making a trip to the bank into really 1 day immediate payment. Next slide, please. So here's another example, and I think we've probably all had this happen to us as consumers when we have repair people are coming to our homes or businesses to make repairs. And in the course of doing those repairs, they maybe need to get some materials. So here we have a customer of the electric business again, and she had to go to work for the day, so she's not at home. but the electrician is working at her house. And in doing the job, he determines that he needs some additional supplies that total $200. She's not at home, so he can simply send her a Zelle request for money, and she can respond and pay him the $200 so he can go and get the supplies and complete the job that same day. And likewise, when he's done with the job, he could send her a request for money for the payment for the services. I know I've had several instances where I've had handymen or others working at my house and they need supplies, and it turns into a multi-day process because they cannot pay for the supplies themselves or are not willing to do so. So they have to wait for me to come, pay them, and come back another day. So if you're in a business that has such a need, this Zelle is a great way to solve that problem as well. Next slide, please. So a few months ago, we actually went out and did a survey of some small business owners using Zelle to understand more about how frequently they were using it, what kind of business they were, and how they really found out about Zelle, and get some comments from them about Zelle. So here we have one example, Ben IT Consulting Company. So this is a great example of one of those professional services. And you can see that this is by no means like really a small business. I mean, it is really bordering on a corporate business. Ben has been using Zelle for a while, and he uses it once a week or more. I think one of the really interesting things about Ben's usage is what motivated him to use Zelle. He said another vendor required payment with Zelle, and that caused him to inquire about Zelle. And also when we asked him about the benefits to Zelle, he noted it's attached to his main business account, and he's never experienced any issues or payment delays. And he sees himself using it more, which, as I said earlier, we have really seen an increase since the COVID distancing measures, and an increase in both sending and receiving on the business side. Next slide, please. So here's another small business owner, Ellen, and this is sort of a different business, food manufacturing. And again, not, you know, a really small business. She's a newer user of Zelle in the last 6 months, but she's using it at least once a week as well. So she noted that her Zelle usage has increased because people are making more purchases from home. So how, you know, true as we just said. And what motivated her to use Zelle was that it was safe and fast. And she sees it as convenient and easy to use. So these were just a couple examples of customers, but across the board, we had really a lot of commentary about how convenient and easy Zelle is to use. Next slide. So hopefully you already have a small business account with Zelle, and you are really interested by all that we have said. So if you do want to go enroll with Zelle, you can simply sign into our mobile banking app, select Zelle from the menu at the bottom, and enroll your business's mobile number or email. If you have multiple business accounts, you just need to choose which account where you would like the payments that you receive with Zelle deposited, and you'll be all set to go.
Great, Carol and Kalpa. There's a bunch of really interesting questions that I think we should address. We have a few minutes right now. So let me just, I just been scrolling through a few of them, and let me just answer a couple off the top. One, I think there's still some, something really important to get an understanding of this between other potential networks. And a lot of the question is, do I, I'm worried about fraud or risk, or how do I enroll, or how do I know? And just so every bank is responsible for KYC, knowing the customer. So we take that enrollment process, just like we enroll you for online banking or for your debit card or your credit card. We use tools, many layers of tools and techniques, but we, U.S. Bank, are responsible for doing that. And so we take that seriously and are responsible for protecting your bank account. And this network is also very different. It's really important to understand that most of the fraud, a lot of fraud, not most, in other networks come from what we call unauthorized debits, where on one of the questions was, I gave someone my check, now they know my checking account. Well, in this service, if you know my email account or you know my mobile number, you can't pull funds from it. There's no financial way for you to pull funds. The consumer or the business always has to authorize the transaction. And as Kalpa said, there's network rules, and the network rules, no different than Visa or MasterCard or ACH or Wire, say you have to do certain things. So in this case, you have to do it behind two-factor authentication, behind traditional, we talk about online banking. So if you're in your mobile, you log in, we know who you are, we use multiple factors to understand, and then you have to authorize that transaction to push. So there is no mechanism. The only real issue is that somebody, quote unquote, takes over, or there's a fraudulent attack and they take over your account, and they somehow, you gave out your username and password, or somehow they hacked in and they have access to your account. And in that case, you would open a Reg E claim, as you do today, and U.S. Bank stands behind that. We'd open a claim and we go through that. So I think it's really important to emphasize that it's a push network, which is different, and it's one of the unique things about Zelle, and also as we talk about real-time payments as we go forward. Another one was around developer portal. I think it's a really interesting question. Do we have developer? And the answer again is the banks that support these networks are developing them. We have a developer portal. We are rolling that out to allow our developers or people who have businesses that want to use that and develop the APIs. But it's bank specific and how they want to expose these APIs to you as a developer. Each one has different models. And remember, this network, as I think Kalpa said, there's only 7 businesses have rolled out this small business app. And but as it grows and matures, I think there'll be a lot of, we do have a developer portal today that is available to some of our customers, and we're looking to how we expose that to many more people as we evolve. And then the other question I saw a lot about was around cost, and what does that cost? And again, that's up to the institution. So every institution, so Zelle, the network, doesn't dictate what the pricing will be. During this COVID environment, U.S. Bank suspended all small business fees. So we have not reinstituted the fee structure, and we're revisiting that. And I think it's important to remember, again, this is a new network, a new service, and so we're going to evolve what makes sense. So where we see a lot of value, or where we believe the small business is getting a lot of value, is areas that we may pay. So if you're replacing, if you're moving $10,000 and you traditionally would have been getting charged $15 or something, that is an area maybe we're looking at to, as you step up, to put a fee in place that wouldn't be $15, let's say it's equivalent of $5. So these are the pricing. This is what Carol and myself spend all day talking about and trying to figure out how we will institute appropriate pricing that adds value, where customers feel. So we're asking questions and surveys, both internally and externally, to do that. And our peer banks are doing the same thing. So again, it's set at the bank level. So I want to say most of these things that we talked about, so the risk, onboarding, pricing, each bank is going to have their own model, which if you heard my opening remarks this morning, this is what makes our payment system and banking system the most dynamic, mosaic in the world where we have, large banks, medium-sized banks, community banks, and credit unions all playing different roles in the ecosystem. So I think more to come, and I think over time there'll be parity, just like you may have heard me in the last one say, I was in a conversation earlier online, much like 30 years ago when we had all these ATM networks, and I was responsible for the NICE payment network, and there was Yankee 24 and the Sum network, and there was actually 70 ATM and debit card networks at one point in the US, and they have all today. You don't, when you go to an ATM, you don't look to see if your card uses there. You know that they have interoperability between these networks. Over time, Zelle hopefully will be one of the dominant ones, and ultimately it will interact with these other networks as they evolve. But that's where we are, just understanding where we are, point in time. I heard some questions earlier about, can you attach multiple bank accounts? Could you change your bank account? And so when this network launched 3 years ago, on the day it launched, that was a fact. You couldn't move your bank account. But quickly, that was a feature that was added. So now people still ask that question. So remember, I think is really important to understand. It was dynamic. When I started and we rolled out, I remember MasterCard in the early 2000s, the network rules evolved we would get quarterly updates all the time. And the same thing is true of Zelle. Remember, it's a living, breathing network, and it's going to evolve, as Kalpa said, and you saw her roadmap, and we're trying to follow the roadmap along with early warning systems. So I don't know if there's any other questions. Was there any other things you wanted to address, Kalpa or Carol?
One thing, I think I saw a question around, integration with invoicing or other players. So yes, certainly, those are things that we are looking to as far as, today the small businesses can send, receive, request money. You have the memo field where you can even add, a customer can add what the payment is for, or, either a thank you note, but, enhancing those, to have some kind of invoicing capabilities, enabling, integrating with other softwares. Those are some things we continue to look for. At end of the day, like Peter said, we are continually informing our roadmap based on how small businesses and our early adopters are using and what they say would add value to their business operations. So just wanted to call that out.
There was also a question on, is this integrated with Single Point? And that's a reference to our commercial cash management application. And the answer is yes, it's incorporated with our commercial banking application, Single Point. Again, other financial institutions are choosing to implement, maybe they implemented APIs before their user application. We implemented the user application Single Point, and now we're rolling out APIs into our developer portal, as I mentioned. So, it's a bank specific thing, not a network thing. Carol, anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, I made note of a couple questions that came in when Luann was presenting, and maybe I'll just respond on those. Someone asked about, is there a limit to how much money you can send? And yes, as Luann mentioned, limits are determined by your bank. But I will say for business accounts, our daily transaction limits are quite a bit higher than they are for consumers. And also too, we do have an option that if a small business has a very custom kind of need, that we can address a custom limit for them as well. And then someone asked a question in the chat room too about, could you use Zelle to refund security deposits for apartments? And yes, absolutely. If you had hundreds of them maybe to do, you could use the disbursements tool that was presented before. But if you have just a few to do at a time, the Zelle for Small Business is a great way to pay back security deposits, which in a lot of states, there is a real time sensitivity about when you need to get those deposits back to the tenant. So Zelle is absolutely a great tool for that.
Great. So if you can go to the next slides. Thank you so much, Kelpa and Carol. That was a great session. So right on time, 12:30. So I'm going to do some closing remarks. I will do 15 minutes, but I'm saving a 3-minute video at the end to keep your attention. So let me go through my closing remarks real quick. And, Carol and Kalpa, you're welcome to stay on and answer questions that come up. If you guys can look at the help me with the answer the questions, that would be great. So Rai, if you can go to the next slide, I'm just gonna close with just where we started with, just that the network is growing. We do see it. I saw one person said it's a niche. I don't know. I think we'll probably be over 1 billion payments this year as a network. So that's pretty significant. Again, a commercially led endeavor, pretty significant to date. The first half of the year was over 133 billion in volume. So the network is still growing. Again, I agree in some of the infancy and the roadmaps we have as financial institutions in the network really are working on fulfilling the need that the banks providing to our corporate customers, our small business, and our consumers. And I think you'll see that as both the networks mature, the businesses mature, and the financial institution providing those products. As I mentioned, like the developer portal, it exists. How robust is it and how you get in and how open it is. Those are things that we're working on trying to productize to move it forward. So want to make sure that I think the network is certainly at scale now, and looking forward to the next part of the journey. It's starting to get really fun, and if we can hear from you on how we can make it better as we move to the next step. I think that's the message I want to leave you with, that this, again, a 3-year-old network, when the wire system in the U.S. is 50 years old, the ATM and debit network is 40 plus years old. This is 3-year-old network. So we have an opportunity to do it right and add things that will make it better for consumers, small business, corporates, and financial institutions that are serving them. Next slide. So this is, please, yeah, thank you. So again, we have 600 banks today with 900, and I have visibility to some of the growth, and there'll be more. And so as not just the large financial institutions, but now we're starting to see the long tail of the banks and some of the other processors begin to participate and have their clients participate. So today we have broad, you can get using the network, you can get it to in most bank accounts, even though the institution isn't connected yet. But as the institutions connect directly, they get real-time access, their consumers get real-time access, and we see that acceleration. So next slide, please. So just to close, I'm going to close on what are the benefits for consumers, small business, and financial institutions. And again, I think there's some people who have not been close to this when they think how this is going to get sent out. So funds are sent directly from the bank. But when I say that, they're set behind your two-factor authentication. The consumer has to authorize it. And again, there's not a transaction on the network that allows anybody to do an unauthorized debit or pull money from your account. A consumer always has to push the money, or a business has to push the money, or that's what we would call it, corporate disbursements. A business has to send it to you. So this is network. So that significantly reduces fraud in the system. And I'll just be transparent. The fraud that can occur is through social engineering. You give your password or something to somebody, or they hack into your account and they take over your account. We call that account takeover. And then it's not you who's pushing out the funds, it's a fraudster. That certainly does happen. And we at U.S. Bank stand behind that, and you would open a fraud claim, and we work through that with you. But that is something that we take very seriously and put layers of security. So when you log on, we know where you're logging on from, who and what. So some of that friction sometimes you feel, that even may be us just ensuring authentication. And we talked about the limits. One really nice thing you'll see in our app is we show you what limits you have. And the reason why you don't have, $10,000 limits day one is we want to look at the behavior you're doing, just like we've looked at your debit card or your credit card history over the last 20 years or 30 years to see what you're actually doing. This is a brand new network. So as we understand what you are doing as a consumer, a business, or a corporate, small business or a corporate, we will allow you to adjust the limits based on knowing your customer. It's really important. The other thing is it's 24/7, 365. Both daughters went off to college. My daughter said she had to move into the sorority. She gave her the ACH credentials of bank account, and she said, "Dad, it didn't come through. It didn't come through." And I had to explain, of course it's not going to come through. You gave it to her on Friday. It missed the window. It came through today. I said, if you use Zelle, if you told them to use Zelle, they would have seen it over the weekend. And so that, from a consumer's perspective, that is the key. So my daughter, who doesn't have a bank account, she's one of those millennials who's at college. She left on Sunday, and they really don't understand. They expect it to come out of their account and to show up in the other person's account 24/7, 365. And that's really what this is all about. So fast availability of the funds. So expecting what a consumer expects. From a business, I sometimes hear real time isn't important. I think that's somewhat true, but what it is from a business, having run a small business, owned a consulting firm, it's about control. So you can send it out on Friday afternoon. You can send out payroll on Friday afternoon at 2:00, and it goes. So real time is about control for the business. Cash flow, both incoming and outgoing, is really important. So it's also your ability to manage cash as it goes outbound. And it's at a lower cost. I mentioned previously in the segment in answering the question that the cost of these transactions is dependent on your bank, the relationship you have with the bank. And just like we have for big businesses, they have relationship pricing. They get, if they have huge balances, they get lower fees. If they're in different segments, they get fees structured with that. You should see over time these Zelle and other electronic transactions being incorporated in your fee structure, in your account structure. So it really is a way to do it better, faster, cheaper for you. And certainly getting, I think Kalpa mentioned $32 billion worth of, or $3.2 trillion worth of checks still out there. That there's 34% of checks that are still out there in consumer bill pay today. Reducing those checks out of the system, the average cost of a check for a business, if you include the returns, is $1.17. So removing that $1.17 of someone actually sending you a check and processing that check to a transaction, 20 cents or 25 cents or $1 as much, or under $1 is really what we're trying to do, no matter what the size of these transactions. And then from a financial perspective, we're trying to provide solutions that exist that are modern and allow you to adapt to this digital world that we certainly live in today. So you can go to the next slide. So next slide is a little bit on U.S. Bank. A lot of you may not know this, but we were certainly in the first group to launch Zelle. We were the first bank to launch a real-time payment. We were the first to participate in this. We are one of the owners of the EWS, which is the owner of the Zelle Network. And I think what you'll see is we offered Zelle as small business and Zelle as disbursements. And you'll see us be on the forefront of other use cases. Luann this morning talked about consumer bill payment. I'm passionate about solving consumer bill payment This is an area where in the US, it's still not a good experience. And the reason why it's not a good experience is the simple thing in your consumer, no matter if you go to a biller to pay directly, you don't have your other bills. If you go into your bank bill pay to pay, you don't have how much you owe, when you owe it. And then when you hit pay, you don't get back an instant acknowledgement knowing either that was going to be credited to your account right away or later in the day or next business day. And that simple, the data, if you take anything else away from me, it's about what these networks can do from a data perspective in real time. So I talk about conversational commerce and how that goes, and you'll see that and how we launched that in our mobile device. But conversational commerce, how much I owe, get back a response from the biller. I owe 50 bucks. Send that 50 bucks. Yes, the biller got it, paid. That conversational commerce is what we are aspiring to do in these new networks, and the really important thing as we move forward. So I'm going to give a quick demo on, you go to the next slide, on our US Bank Smart Assistant. So we're going to go do a demo in a second, but let me just read this slide. And so what this slide is doing is going to tee up the demo that we have, and it's just a 3-minute video. And what we've incorporated in our mobile experience is a voice-enabled smart assistant, and it has been able to reduce friction and have those conversations that I talked about. So you say, what is my balance? And it responds back and will bring up the screen, $33. You want to say, pay my bills. It will bring up your biller list and say which bills you have. And if it doesn't know, it will say, you know, we'll ask you questions. And so today's technology is really, really amazing. And it's what we're leading with the forefront. So of course, not just can you pay your bills, know your balances, or transfer money. You can do a Zelle real-time payment using the virtual assistant, using your voice.